Welcome to the deep dive. If you're anything like me, you're probably trying to cut through this absolute deluge of advice out there about health, performance, mindset.
It's overwhelming, isn't it? Just information overload.
Totally. Every day there's a new hack, a new guru telling you this is the thing you absolutely must do.
And often they conflict. It's really hard to know where to focus your energy.
Exactly. Which is why we put together this deep dive. Our mission really is to give you a high ROI roadmap.
Right. We want to show you the actions, the tactics that give you the biggest return for, the effort you put in. Minimal input, maximum impact.
And to do that, we've synthesized a pretty massive stack of sources today. We're talking insights from top longevity experts like Dr. Reddy and Dr. Vonda Wright. They're really changing the conversation around aging.
And performance coaches who focus on things like human connection, people like Roger Love on voice, Jim Murphy on inner resilience.
Plus neuroscientists digging into perception, cognition. Dr. Christoph Koch, Dr. Bryce Applebaum. It's a diverse group.
It really is. And the goal is laser sharp. We're extracting the core accelerated tactics, the things that give you a measurable edge, physically and mentally, like right now.
So if you're looking for that next level of self-mastery, but maybe without drowning in all the data,
then you're definitely in the right place. We're aiming for efficiency in those high-leverage actions.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Starting, as always, seems logical to start with the physical foundation, right? That high-efficiency path to longevity. All right, let's kick off with something that, well, almost everyone seems to get slightly wrong, especially when it comes to women's health and aging.
Okay.
We've all been kind of conditioned medically, socially, to think that just moving is enough.
Right, like clocking your steps, getting that walk in.
Exactly. You do your 60 minutes walking, you feel pretty good about it, right? Job done. But the work from people like Dr. Vonda Wright, Dr. Stacy Sims, it strongly suggests this is what they call the walking trap.
It really is. And it's probably the biggest mistake people make when they shift from just general wellness thinking to like true longevity planning.
Okay, so break that down. Why is walking a trap? It's good for you, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Walking is fantastic for cardiovascular health, great for mental well-being, getting outside.
Sure.
But if we define aging well as maintaining your functional capacity, your strength, your power.
Power, like explosive strength.
Exactly. The ability to interact robustly with your environment when you're, say, 80 years old.
Right.
Walking it doesn't provide that stimulus. It's insufficient.
Why is that distinction, that difference between general cardio, like walking, and dedicated strength, so absolutely critical?
Because fundamentally, aging involves a loss of power and muscle mass. That's sarcopenia.
Right.
And think about it. When you're 80, you need actual power just for daily tasks we barely think about now.
Like what?
Like getting up quickly if you stumble, or even just getting off the floor, stopping yourself if you slip, carrying a heavy bag of groceries up a couple flights of stairs.
Okay, yeah, I see that. Walking doesn't train that kind of...
Exactly. It doesn't provide the necessary external load to really challenge those muscle fibers, and it doesn't give the right signal to protect your bone density either, which is huge.
And this muscle decline, it's not just a slow, steady downhill slide, is it?
Yeah.
Especially for women. The sources mention a specific period, a critical decade.
Absolutely spot on. Between the ages of about 35 and 45, women typically experience an accelerated decline.
Accelerated? Why?
It's physiologically tied to hormonal changes, primarily the drop in estrogen during perimenopause. So while the sort of standard muscle loss might be around 1% a year, that loss speeds up quite dramatically during this decade because of declining estrogen.
You can feel this, like tangibly.
You really can. The classic example people give is struggling to open a tight jar of pickles.
Ah, yes.
That loss of grip strength, that loss of just raw power, it becomes noticeable.
Let's get into the weeds a bit here, because the why behind this is fascinating. It's not just hormones go down, muscles shrink. There's a specific mechanism at play, right? At the protein level.
Precisely. Estrogen is actually tightly linked to a key muscle protein called myosin.
Myosin.
Yeah.
That's involved in contraction.
Exactly. It's crucial for making muscles contract forcefully. So when estrogen levels drop, myosin's responsiveness weakens. The signal isn't as strong.
Okay. So less estrogen, weaker muscle response via myosin.
But here's the cool part. The body is incredibly adaptive. If you introduce a significant external load, something heavy.
Which walking definitely doesn't provide.
Right. If you provide that heavy load, you basically force myosin to bond strongly to handle it. You're creating a mechanical signal that compensates for the loss of that chemical hormonal signal.
Ah, okay. So heavy lifting is like sending a workaround signal directly to the muscle protein.
That's a perfect way to think about it. And there's another piece too. Estrogen also helps store acetylcholine.
Acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter.
Yes, the critical one that signals muscles for strong, fast contractions. Losing estrogen means you also lose some of that storage capacity.
Making quick, powerful movements harder.
Exactly. So heavy lifting becomes the most direct way to bypass or compensate for both the myosin weakening and that acetylcholine storage issue.
This really hammers home why just moving more isn't the answer. It has to be the right kind of movement.
The right kind of stimulus, yeah.
Which brings us to the protocol. What does the science say is optimal? Because this contradicts the idea that you need to spend hours in the gym. We're looking for efficiency, right? Max signal, minimal input.
Minimum 2 days a week, ideally 3, of heavy load strength training.
Heavy load. Define heavy.
Heavy means lifting close to fatigue. The goal isn't just moving weights around, it's stimulating the central nervous system and pushing those muscle fibers near their limit.
Got it.
A common effective structure is something like 5 sets of 5 repetitions, the classic 5x5. By the time you get to the 4th or 5th rep of that final set, you should be genuinely struggling, really focusing to maintain good form.
So intensity is key, not necessarily volume or time.
Intensity and load are paramount.
Now, if, say, 20 minutes of that kind of heavy lifting is enough to stimulate the CNS effectively, why do so many popular workout programs push for 60, even 90 minutes of lifting?
That's where we need to distinguish between CNS stimulation and metabolic stress.
Okay.
A really long, grueling 60 or 90-minute session often pushes you deep into metabolic stress. You're exhausted, dripping sweat, maybe even shaking.
Yeah, feeling wrecked.
Right. But that can actually elevate cortisol too much. It can leave you feeling tired but wired and negatively impact your recovery, your hormonal balance, especially for women.
Interesting. So shorter, more intense might be better hormonally?
For this specific goal, stimulating the CNS for strength and power adaptation without excessive systemic stress, yes. 20 minutes focused on big compound movements.
Like heavy squats, deadlifts, presses.
Exactly. Those are enough to send that high leverage signal the CNS needs without causing unnecessary breakdown or prolonged cortisol spikes.
So, if someone has limited time, which is most people, how should they think about prioritizing? What about things like Pilates or light resistance bands, that kind of thing?
Dr. Sims uses a great analogy here. She calls things like Pilates and light resistance soul food.
Soul food.
Yeah, they feel good. They definitely help with stability, core engagement, maybe flexibility, important stuff.
Sure.
But they are absolutely not the bread and butter you need to optimize those changes happening during perimenopause and postmenopause.
So the heavy load is the non-negotiable.
Prioritize the heavy load. That's the main meal. The other stuff is great. It's beneficial, but it's the side dish, not the entree for this specific challenge.
That distinction alone is incredibly valuable. Okay, let's pivot slightly. We've talked foundational strength. Now let's look at advanced prevention through diagnostics. Specifically, cardiovascular health first. Standard checkups often miss some really critical early risks, don't they?
They really do. We absolutely need to move beyond just looking at the standard lipid panel, total cholesterol, HDL, LDL.
Which is what most basic physicals check.
Exactly. Dr. Reddy is really emphatic about this. Everyone, but especially people with a family history of early heart disease, needs to get their lipoprotein little checked, LPA.
Okay, LPA. What is that exactly, and why is it dangerous but often missed?
LPA is a specific type of lipoprotein particle, and the levels are almost entirely determined by your genetics.
Wow, really? So diet doesn't impact it much?
Not significantly, no, which is why you typically only need to check it once in your lifetime.
Okay, and why is it dangerous?
It behaves like a really sticky, inflammatory version of LDL cholesterol. It aggressively promotes plaque buildup in the arteries and also increases the risk of blood clots.
Sticky and inflammatory sounds bad.
It is. If your LPA level is elevated, it significantly bumps up your cardiovascular risk, often independent of your other cholesterol levels. It's a major hidden risk factor.
So if someone finds out they have high LPA, what can they even do if it's genetic? What's the intervention strategy?
Well, first, knowing is half the battle, right? You can then be much more aggressive with managing all the other risk factors, blood pressure, LDL, lifestyle.
Sure.
But there are also medical interventions. Historically, high-dose niacin was sometimes used, though with side effects. Now, newer therapies are emerging, like PCSK9 inhibitors, which can be very effective. The key is knowing that risk is there, so you and your doctor can manage it proactively, treating it as a distinct major threat.
Okay, so knowing the number is crucial for proactive management. Now moving to imaging, there seems to be a bit of nuance between two common tests. The CAS score, coronary artery calcium score,
Right.
and a coronary CT angiogram, or CCTA. Why is the CCTA getting more attention from preventative cardiologists now?
The CCTA is just fundamentally more sophisticated. It gives a much more precise picture of your actual risk.
How so? What's the difference?
Think of it this way. The CAS score only detects calcified plaque, hardened plaque. Now, calcified plaque isn't great, but often it represents older plaque that the body has tried to stabilize, to wall off. It's often less dangerous than the soft stuff.
Soft stuff.
Yes, soft, non-calcified plaque. That's the dangerous, unstable kind. That's the stuff that's much more likely to rupture suddenly and cause a heart attack or stroke.
And the CAS score? It misses that soft plaque.
It misses it entirely. So you could be developing significant amounts of this dangerous, soft, unstable plaque, but because it hasn't hardened or calcified yet, your CAC score could be 0.
Wow. That's a massive false sense of security.
It's a huge potential blind spot. A CCTA, on the other hand, uses contrast dye and can visualize both the hard calcified plaque and the soft non-calcified plaque. It dramatically reduces the risk of that devastating false negative.
So it gives you a much truer picture of your immediate risk level.
Exactly. A much clearer, more comprehensive assessment.
And the power of this imaging, according to Dr. Reddy, isn't just about assessing risk, right? It's about mapping your trajectory.
Precisely. It's about using that detailed data to drive massive behavioral change and track progress. Instead of just saying, yep, you've got some plaque, the CCTA allows you to quantify it.
Wow.
You can map your current risk percentile. For example, you might find out that at age 45, your plaque burden puts you in the 84th percentile for people your age. That's a wake-up call.
Definitely.
Then the proactive goal becomes intervention lifestyle changes, maybe medication aimed at actively shifting that percentile down over time. Maybe the goal is to get down to the 14th percentile within 10 years.
So it turns it into a tangible, measurable goal, like optimizing performance.
Exactly. It shifts the whole mindset from vague being healthy to actively, competitively managing and reducing your risk score. Very powerful motivator.
And this push for earlier, more accelerated detection isn't just for heart disease, is it? It's happening across the board. Cancer, neurodegeneration.
Absolutely. Take cancer.
Uh,
We now have these multi-cancer early detection tests, or MCEDs. These are blood tests.
Blood tests for cancer. How early can they detect it?
Incredibly early. They look for microscopic fragments of tumor DNA that get shed into the bloodstream. Cancer often takes maybe 20 years to grow into a detectable mass on imaging.
Right.
These tests can potentially pick up signals way, way earlier in that process. It's a potential game changer for catching cancers at their most treatable stages.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And what about for brain health, like Alzheimer's risk? Diagnostics there used to be pretty invasive, didn't they?
Extremely. For years, the gold standard for assessing certain Alzheimer's markers involved a lumbar puncture, a spinal tap. Painful, invasive, expensive, not something you do routinely.
No kidding.
But now we have these extraordinary breakthroughs with non-invasive blood tests. They can measure markers like PTA217.
PTA217, what does that indicate?
PTA217 reflects a specific modification phosphorylation of the tau protein. Abnormal tau tangles are one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease pathology. Being able to measure this accurately in blood is revolutionary.
So it gives people a much more accessible way to get early information about their potential risk.
Exactly. Early information allows for proactive steps.
Speaking of proactive steps, I actually took some of the advice from the sources here and compiled my own sort of DIY genetic scorecard for Alzheimer's.
Oh, interesting. How did you do that?
I pulled my genetic data, looked at my APOE4 status, which is a known risk gene, plus a bunch of other relevant SNPs, these single nucleotide polymorphism.
Right, the polygenic risk.
Yeah. And then cross-reference that genetic predisposition with lifestyle factors, diet, exercise, sleep, to get a rough personal risk score. Mine came out around 12, which the sources suggested was slightly elevated baseline risk.
See, that's incredibly powerful. Utilizing those polygenic risk scores allows for truly personalized prevention. If you know your genetic dice are slightly loaded, maybe you become even more diligent about the lifestyle factors you can control.
Exactly. It makes it less abstract.
It gives you agency over that genetic trajectory. You can't change your genes, but you can profoundly influence how they express themselves through your choices. It turns a potential fear into an actionable, measurable challenge.
Okay, so we've covered some high-leverage physical stuff. Now let's pivot. Let's talk about the inner game, the psychological frameworks, the behaviors that underpin peak performance and resilience. And first up is something maybe a bit surprising, the human voice.
Ah, yes. Roger loves work.
Right. He argues our voice isn't just for communication. It's actually a powerful, maybe untapped physical biohack.
He really does. He views the voice and sound in general as a primary mechanism for regulating our own physiology and emotions.
How so? How does sound change us physically?
Well, think about it. Sound waves are physical vibrations. When we speak or sing, those frequencies literally vibrate the air, and they cause a physical somatic reaction in the listener's body, their eardrums, their bones, their tissues.
Okay.
It actually changes brain function, impacts stress levels, affects how well we connect with others. That feeling of getting goosebumps when you hear a beautiful, resonant voice,
Yeah.
that's a real physical connection being made through vibration. It's physics.
That's wild. And Love's most, I think, profound insight is about who the voice is actually for. He says, your voice is not for you.
That's such a powerful reframe, isn't it? A total paradigm shift.
It really is. Explain that.
Most of us judge our own voices based on how they sound inside our own heads, bouncing around our skull, and we're usually pretty critical.
Definitely.
But Love argues that your voice is fundamentally a gift you give to the listener. It's their experience of it, the resonance, the pitch, the pacing, the emotion they perceive that truly matters, much more than your own internal critique.
So focusing on the listener's experience, not your own self-consciousness.
Exactly. If you think of it as a tool you're using for them, for connection, for impact, you naturally become less worried about how you sound and more focused on delivering effectively.
Okay, so if we want to master that gift, where do we start? It's not just about the vocal cords, is it?
Not at all. It starts with the breath. The absolute foundation is diaphragmatic breathing.
Breathing from the belly.
Right. And Love points out this interesting little societal conflict here.
Which is?
Many of us have this ingrained habit, maybe for aesthetic reasons, of trying to keep our stomachs pulled in tight.
Yeah, holding it in.
But that actively works against the best way to produce sound. Proper diaphragmatic breathing, that deep supported breath, requires you to allow your stomach to move slightly forward as the diaphragm drops down, fully inflating the lungs from the bottom up.
So you have to let go of sucking it in.
You do.
Yeah.
That gives you the air pressure, the power, the control you need for good vocal tone and resonance.
Okay, diaphragmatic breathing is key. Now, something very relevant for anyone listening to this deep dive right now. Love has strong opinions about speeding up audio content.
He really does. The common practice of listening to podcasts or audiobooks at 1.5x or 2x speed.
Which saves time, admittedly.
It saves time, yes, but he argues it comes at a significant cost. When you artificially speed up speech, you fundamentally alter the pitch and the natural cadence, the rhythm of the speaker's voice.
Okay, and the impact of that is?
It dramatically reduces the emotional connection and the perceived authenticity. Your brain subconsciously registers that something sounds off, unnatural.
So even if you understand the words?
The sense of intimacy, of genuine human connection, which is actually crucial for deep learning and retention, is diminished. It's an efficiency gain, but with a definite emotional and connection penalty.
That's a really interesting trade-off to consider. Okay, let's switch frameworks a bit. Moving from the voice to inner resilience, Jim Murphy's concept of inner excellence.
Yeah, this is about building that deep emotional mastery.
And the goal isn't necessarily to be calm and serene all the time, right? It's more about how you respond under pressure.
Exactly. The goal is to move beyond just reacting emotionally when things get tough. Murphy puts it beautifully. The aim is to cultivate inner peace to the point where when life squeezes you, puts you under pressure,
Yeah.
what comes out is that inner peace. Not fear, not anger, not defensiveness.
Okay, and how do we cultivate that? He simplifies things quite a bit, doesn't he?
He does. He boils down existence to a fundamental choice we're always making. Are you walking in love, or are you walking in fear?
Love versus fear. Define those.
He defines love not just romantically, but as a state of creative self-expression, openness, fearlessness, contribution. And fear is the opposite. Self-protection, defensiveness, withdrawal, building walls around yourself.
So choosing growth and expression over safety and contraction.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And making that choice for love, for expansion, often requires consciously stepping outside your comfort zone. It requires embracing things that feel genuinely uncomfortable.
Including physical discomfort. Like he mentions things like cold plunging.
Exactly. Expanding what's possible for you means being willing to tolerate uncomfortable feelings. Practices like cold plunging or intense exercise introduce a controlled dose of acute stress, of conscious suffering.
Why is that valuable?
It trains your nervous system. It teaches your body and mind that you can experience intense discomfort without completely freaking out, without spiraling into panic. You build resilience to distress.
So discomfort tolerance is key to growth.
Murphy says the richest, best possible life isn't one that avoids struggle entirely. It's one that has, as he puts it, one foot in joy, one foot in suffering. You need that dynamic tension for growth.
Okay. Now we have to talk about failure. And specifically, the emotion of shame, which Murphy calls the trickster. Why is shame so uniquely debilitating when it comes to performance or trying new things?
Shame hits us with this overwhelming, almost paralyzing sense of doom. It feels huge.
It really does. Why? What's the root of that intensity?
It ties back to our ancient biology, our billion-year-old operating system running in the background.
Okay.
For our early human ancestors, being ostracized, being shamed, and kicked out of the tribe was effectively a death sentence. You couldn't survive alone.
So shame feels existential because historically it was linked to survival.
Exactly. Being rejected by the group meant almost certain death. So that ancient wiring makes shame feel like an immediate life-threatening danger, even when intellectually we know it's not.
Wow. So given that deep biological wiring, how on earth do we counter it when we inevitably fail or mess up?
The key is to consciously reframe failure. Think of it almost like exposure therapy for that ancient fear response.
Exposure therapy.
Yeah. When you try something bold, maybe you take a risk and you fail.
Yeah.
And then you consciously register, wow, okay, that was unpleasant, maybe embarrassing, but I didn't actually die.
Right. The world didn't end.
The world didn't end. You survived.
Yeah.
Each time you go through that loop, attempt, fail, survive, you begin to dial down the intensity of that primal fear response associated with failure.
So repetition desensitizes the trigger.
It helps transform failure from feeling like an existential threat into simply being data, an experience you learn from. This builds the courage to keep choosing that path of love, creative expression, trying things instead of retreating into fear and self-protection.
That fear, that self-protection, often manifests as just endless overthinking, right? Or trying to find absolute certainty before acting. Dr. Bobby Parmar talks about this.
Yeah, Parmar argues that chasing certainty is basically a fool's errand.
Why? Isn't certainty good?
Because the world is fundamentally uncertain. It's always changing, always unpredictable. Trying to nail down absolute certainty before you move forward is a guaranteed recipe for frustration and inaction.
So what's the alternative? Just leap blindly.
No, the alternative is to leverage productive doubt.
Productive doubt. How is that different from just worrying?
Productive doubt is small, it's specific, and it's actionable. It asks questions like, okay, what's one specific thing that could realistically go wrong with this plan in the next 24 hours?
As opposed to?
As opposed to destructive rumination, which asks huge, vague questions like, what's the absolute worst-case scenario that could happen 5 years from now if this fails? That just paralyzes you.
Okay, so focused, near-term doubt that leads to action.
Exactly. And here's a really interesting kind of counterintuitive insight for anyone who considers themselves an overthinker.
Yeah.
Overthinkers can actually perform better in novel, unpredictable situations.
Really? How? I thought overthinking was bad.
It can be if it stops you from acting. But if the worrying doesn't lead to paralysis, the overthinker's brain has often already run through countless simulations of potential problems and failure modes.
So they've kind of mentally prepared for more contingencies.
Exactly. They might be better equipped to adapt when the unexpected inevitably happens, provided they haven't let the analysis stop them from getting started in the first place.
Okay, so the key is preventing that paralysis. How do we do that? How do we stop the worry from shutting us down?
The most powerful tool seems to be externalization. You need to get the worries out of your head to get some distance from them.
Externalization. Like talking about them.
Talking helps, but the simplest, highest ROI technique is probably journaling. Just writing down your specific worries.
How does writing them down help?
It creates just enough distance, as Parmar says, for you to start looking at them more objectively, to begin regulating them. Think of it like cleaning out a messy junk drawer. You can't really organize it while everything's still crammed inside. You have to pull everything out, lay it on the counter, see what you've actually got. Journaling does that for your worries.
Puts them out on the counter. I like that.
And once they're externalized, you can start applying other tools too, like leveraging external advice, even if it's just from yourself.
How do you mean?
By asking yourself this simple question: what advice would I give to a good friend if they were in this exact situation?
Ah, that's clever. Why does that work?
Because we're almost always kinder, more compassionate, and more solution-focused when advising a friend than we are when talking to ourselves. That question instantly shifts your perspective from self-criticism or panic towards constructive problem-solving.
It taps into a different part of the brain almost.
It really seems to. You access a wiser, calmer advisor within yourself.
Okay, so externalize the worry, then apply that advice to a friend filter. What about proactive planning? Is there a tool for heading off worries before they even start?
Yes. This is where Parmar suggests using the premortem.
Premortem sounds ominous, like an autopsy before death.
Kind of, but it's incredibly useful. Let's walk through an example. Imagine you're launching a small creative project, maybe a website or a small business, in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
The premortem starts by fast-forwarding mentally. Assume it's 6 weeks from now and the project is dead. It failed spectacularly.
Okay, morbid, but I'm following.
Now you ask the critical question: what was the most likely cause of death? What realistically killed this project?
So brainstorming failure points.
Exactly. You might identify things like, we probably waited too long to market it and missed the key window, or the main software we relied on crashed and we didn't have a backup plan, or we underestimated the costs.
Right, the likely culprits.
Once you've identified those most likely causes of death, the next step is crucial. You ask, okay, knowing these are the biggest risks, what are we going to do right now, today, to prevent those specific failure modes from happening?
Ah, so you build in the solutions proactively.
Precisely. You might create a stricter marketing timeline, or research and set up a backup software solution immediately, or revise your budget more realistically. It turns that vague anxiety about failure into specific, actionable, preventative planning. It's brilliant.
All right, we've dug into the physical hardware upgrades, the psychological software. Now let's talk about how we fuel the whole system, the metabolic connection.
Yes, tying it all together.
When we hear metabolic health, often we just think about, weight, or maybe how fast we burn calories, converting food to energy.
Right, that's the common simplified view.
But the definition we're pulling from sources like Dr. Chris Palmer's work is much broader, much more fundamental than that, isn't it?
It really is. Metabolic health isn't just about energy conversion. It's about the overall efficiency and coordination of basically all the systems in your body working together.
Efficiency of the whole machine.
Exactly. How well your hormones are signaling, how efficiently your cells are producing energy, how well your body repairs tissue, manages inflammation. It's the performance level of your entire integrated biological system.
Okay, so it's foundational to everything. And what's really sobering is this link, this vicious cycle, connecting our brain health directly to our metabolic state.
That bidirectional link is incredibly important to understand. It's a two-way street of negative feedback if things go wrong.
Break down that loop for us. How does it work?
Okay, so it can start in the brain. Chronic inflammation,
Mm.
particularly in a key regulatory area called the hypothalamus.
The hypothalamus controls hunger, temperature, hormones.
Exactly, a master regulator. Inflammation there directly leads to changes in the body, specifically increased accumulation of visceral belly fat and worsening insulin resistance.
So brain inflammation drives belly fat, insulin issues.
Yes, but then the loop feeds back the other way. As you accumulate more body fat, especially that inflammatory visceral fat, and as your insulin resistance gets worse, that state creates more systemic inflammation throughout the body, and that inflammation can cross the blood-brain barrier, causing more inflammation back in the hypothalamus.
Wow. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. Brain inflammation causes metabolic problems, which cause more brain inflammation.
Exactly. A vicious cycle of metabolic unrest that unfortunately accelerates both physical decline and cognitive decline. They're tightly linked through this inflammatory loop.
And if there's one thing that seems to be pouring gasoline on that inflammatory fire, it's the modern diet, specifically ultra-processed foods or UPFs.
This is, without a doubt, the elephant in the room for modern metabolic health. The The statistics are staggering.
What are we talking about?
By some estimates, over 60% of the calories in the average American diet now come from these ultra-processed foods.
60%. And define UPF again, it's not just obvious junk food like cookies and chips, right?
No, it's much broader. A simple rule of thumb is, if it contains ingredients you wouldn't typically find in your home kitchen, things like high fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated oils, artificial sweeteners, emulsifiers, preservatives, artificial colors, and flavors, it's likely ultra-processed.
Okay. And these foods, they're deliberately designed in a certain way, aren't they?
They are explicitly engineered by food scientists for hyperpalatability. They hit all our bliss points: salt, sugar, fat, often combined in ways not found in nature.
Designed to be irresistible.
And crucially, they're often low in fiber and protein, meaning they bypass our body's natural satiety signals. It's easy to overconsume them without feeling truly full or satisfied.
So they drive overconsumption. But what about the ingredients themselves? Beyond just sugar and fat, are those non-ancestral ingredients problematic on their own?
Yes, there's growing evidence that many of these additives, things like certain artificial sweeteners, emulsifiers found in salad dressings and ice creams, various preservatives can directly damage the integrity of our gut microbiome.
The gut bacteria.
Exactly. They can disrupt the balance of bacteria, potentially damage the gut lining, leading to increased gut permeability or leaky gut.
And leaky gut leads to
Systemic inflammation. When the gut barrier is compromised, undigested food particles and bacterial components can leak into the bloodstream, triggering an immune response and chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body.
which then feeds right back into that brain-body inflammatory loop we just talked about.
Precisely. It's a major driver of that whole negative cycle.
Okay, that's pretty daunting, especially that 60% statistic. Given that reality, what are the most accelerated, highest ROI dietary changes people can make to start fixing this?
Dr. Reddy really emphasizes two key things. First, drastically cut back on processed carbohydrates, the refined sugars, white flours, basically the bulk of those UPFs.
Okay, cut the processed carbs. What's the second thing?
Significantly increase protein and especially fiber intake.
Fiber. Why is fiber so crucial?
Fiber is foundational for several reasons. It feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut, helping restore that microbiome balance. It helps regulate blood sugar by slowing down glucose absorption. And it promotes satiety, helping you feel fuller for longer.
And we're not getting enough, generally.
Not even close. The recommended daily target is around 30 grams of fiber. Only about 11%, maybe less, of Americans actually hit that target. Most are getting half that or even less.
Wow. So more fiber, less processed carbs, more protein, any simple behavioral fixes that help achieve this.
Dr. Mariza Snyder makes a really strong case for simply cooking more meals at home.
Back to basics. Why is that so effective?
Because it gives you ultimate control. When you cook at home, you control the ingredients. You automatically eliminate most of those weird additives, emulsifiers, hidden sugars,
Right.
and you naturally control portion sizes better than you do with restaurant meals or prepackaged foods. It allows your body's own satiety signals a chance to actually work and reset.
Makes sense. Control the inputs.
Mm.
Okay, moving from the fuel itself to a foundational pillar that affects everything. Sleep.
Ah, yes. The non-negotiable.
We touched on it earlier, but you mentioned that women seem to be even more sensitive to sleep disruption than men.
The research suggests they often show the negative physiological effects more quickly and more acutely, yes.
And that sensitivity has a massive, almost immediate metabolic impact, doesn't it?
Huge. Just one night of poor, insufficient sleep can put your body on a blood sugar regulation roller coaster the next day.
A roller coaster.
Meaning more unstable blood sugar levels, more insulin resistance, and incredibly, the effects of that one bad night can take under 36 hours to fully resolve metabolically.
36 hours. So a bad night's sleep on Monday could still be messing with your insulin sensitivity on Wednesday morning.
Absolutely. It throws your system off for quite a while. It really highlights how critical, consistent, restorative sleep is for metabolic stability.
And the flip side is also true, right? Prioritizing sleep has dramatic positive results. There was a study mentioned.
Yes, the findings are remarkable. Studies have shown that when people are on a calorie-controlled diet, those who optimize their sleep lose significantly more body fat mass, like 50% more, compared to those who are sleep-deprived, but eating the same number of calories.
Same calories, but 50% more fat loss just by sleeping better. How does that work? What's the mechanism?
It comes down to hormonal regulation. Deep restorative sleep is when your body balances key hormones like leptin, which signals satiety, and ghrelin, which signals hunger. Poor sleep throws these off, increasing hunger and cravings.
Okay, hunger hormones. What else?
Cortisol. Poor sleep elevates cortisol, the stress hormone, which promotes fat storage, particularly around the midsection, and also worsens insulin resistance. Essentially, when sleep deprived, your body seems to shift into an energy storage mode rather than an efficient energy utilization mode. It holds onto fat more readily.
So sleep isn't just passive rest. It's active hormonal and metabolic regulation time.
Absolutely. It's arguably one of the easiest leverage points for optimizing hormonal signaling, specifically for fat loss and metabolic health.
Okay, sold on sleep. What are the practical, high-leverage sleep hygiene tactics that actually move the needle beyond just try to sleep more?
For people who aren't dealing with clinical insomnia, one of the simplest, highest impact changes is often just trying to go to bed 1 hour earlier.
Just 1 hour.
That extra hour, especially if it falls earlier in the night, often significantly increases the amount of time spent in the most crucial deep sleep and REM sleep phases. It can make a big difference.
Okay, shift bedtime earlier if possible. What about behaviors before bed, the screen time issue?
That's the other big one. Implementing a strict screen curfew, say no phones, tablets, or computers for at least an hour before your target bedtime is crucial. The blue light exposure disrupts melatonin production.
But it's hard. What do you do during that hour instead of scrolling?
You have to consciously replace the habit with something high value and relaxing, something you actually enjoy, like reading a physical book, listening to calm music, taking a warm bath, gentle stretching, or the sources mentioned making a ritual out of something like having a warm, non-caffeinated drink, maybe like hot cocoa made with reishi mushroom powder.
Reishi mushroom. Why reishi specifically?
Reishi has compounds that are known to support relaxation and stress reduction. It also contains precursors that the body can use later in the night for melatonin production. But just as importantly, the ritual itself, preparing the drink, sipping it, slowly signals to your brain that it's time to wind down.
So it's replacing a high-stimulation habit, screens, with a low-stimulation relaxing ritual.
Exactly. It prepares the nervous system for rest and directly benefits that whole metabolic and hormonal cycle we've been talking about.
Got it. Okay, finally, let's circle back to movement, but specifically looking at efficiency and integrating different types of cardio alongside that heavy lifting we started with. We're talking SIT, HIT, and the popular zone 2.
Right. This is about getting the maximum adaptation signal from different kinds of intensity.
Let's start with the most intense. SIT, sprint interval training. Define that precisely.
SIT is about maximum intensity bursts. We're talking 30 seconds or less, off even shorter, like 10, 20 seconds of moving as hard as you possibly can, all out effort.
Like truly maximal effort.
Maximal, followed by a full, comfortable recovery period. Could be several minutes of easy walking or complete rest. The key is the absolute peak intensity during the sprint, not the total duration of the workout.
And why is this considered the best adaptation boost? What's happening physiologically?
It triggers some really powerful, almost unique adaptations. That extreme muscular demand forces the activation of a protein called GLUT4.
GLUT4, what does that do?
Think of GLUT4 as the door on your muscle cells that lets glucose, sugar, in to be used for energy, independent of insulin. Sprinting dramatically increases the number of these GLUT4 doors on your muscle cells, making your body radically more efficient at clearing sugar from your bloodstream.
So it improves insulin sensitivity, basically.
Massively. And it seems to create lasting, potentially permanent epigenetic changes in how those muscle cells function. Plus, that intense contraction releases signaling molecules called myokines from the muscles.
Myokines.
Yeah, these molecules travel through the body and have beneficial effects elsewhere, including signaling the body specifically not to store visceral fat. So SIT is an incredibly potent metabolic signal for both sugar handling and fat storage patterns.
Wow, okay. Short bursts, huge impact. Now, how does that compare to the broader category of HIT, high-intensity interval training?
HIT is more of an umbrella term. It involves intervals too, but the intensity might not be truly maximal like in SIT, and the work-to-rest ratios are often different.
Give an example of HIT.
A common HIT structure might be something like EMOM, every minute on the minute, where you do a certain number of reps of an exercise at the start of each minute and rest for the remainder, or intervals like 45 seconds hard, 15 seconds rest, repeated.
So more total time spent at a high intensity compared to SIT's very short bursts.
Generally, yes. HIT usually involves a greater overall volume of work done at a high heart rate. This is fantastic for burning more calories during the workout itself and for improving cardiovascular fitness, mitochondrial health, blood flow. Lots of benefits.
But maybe not quite that same peak epigenetic signaling punch as true SIT.
Potentially not quite the same maximal signal, but still incredibly valuable for overall fitness and metabolic health. They offer slightly different benefits.
Okay. Now, what about the most popular form of cardio for many people? Zone 2 training. That long, slow, steady state stuff. Where does that fit in, especially thinking back to our discussion about women and hormonal changes?
This is where the major caveat comes in, particularly based on Dr. Sim's work. Zone 2 training, working at that conversational pace for longer durations, is excellent for building aerobic base, improving mitochondrial density and efficiency, and fat burning during the exercise. It works beautifully for many people, especially men focusing on endurance. But for women, particularly peri- and postmenopausal women, looking for the absolute biggest bang for their buck in terms of body composition, hormonal balance, and even cognitive benefits, Zone 2 is likely not the most efficient use of limited training time.
So it shouldn't be the priority if time is tight.
If time is limited, the priority absolutely needs to be that heavy resistance training we discussed first, then probably followed by some form of high-intensity work like SIT or HIT.
Why is Zone 2 less efficient for women's body composition, specifically in this context?
Again, it comes back to needing that stronger stimulus to counteract the effects of lower estrogen. Heavy lifting provides the mechanical load needed for muscle and bone. High intensity provides the potent metabolic and neurological signaling. Zone 2, while beneficial for endurance and enjoyable.
The soul food.
Exactly, the soul food. It's great for stress management, good for the heart, enjoyable, but it just doesn't provide that same high-level stimulus needed to drive those crucial muscle adaptations or potent metabolic shifts as efficiently as heavy weights or sprints do in the context of these hormonal changes.
So prioritize heavy lifting, then maybe some hits it, and fit in Zone 2 where possible for enjoyment and base fitness, but don't rely on it as the primary driver for body composition changes.
That seems to be the most efficient strategy based on the current understanding, especially for women navigating those midlife changes.
Okay. And one final point on movement. The absolute necessity of breaking up sedentary time. We can't just do one big workout and think we're covered if we sit the rest of the day, right?
That is the myth we absolutely have to dispel. The research is clear. Sitting for prolonged periods, like 8 hours at a desk, significantly negates many of the cardiovascular and metabolic benefits of that 1-hour workout you did in the morning.
So what's the antidote? Just stand more.
Standing is better than sitting, but moving is even better. The strategy needs to be integration of movement throughout the entire day.
How often? How much?
The ideal is to incorporate short bursts of movement, maybe just 60 seconds to 5 minutes every hour or so.
Like what kind of movement?
Anything that gets your heart rate up a bit and muscles working. A brisk walk up and down a flight of stairs, a few jumping jacks or air squats by your desk, quick walk around the office or block. The goal is to interrupt the sitting, get the blood flowing, increase blood flow to the brain.
So it's about frequency, these little movement snacks.
Exactly. These microdoses of movement throughout the day seem crucial for mitigating the negative health impacts of otherwise sedentary behavior. It's essential not just for metabolic health, but for maintaining focus and cognitive function too. Don't let yourself be sedentary for hours on end. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay. Wow. We have covered a ton of ground. Here's where it gets really interesting, I think, when we pull it all together.
Yeah, let's synthesize.
We've packed this deep dive with really high leverage actions. We looked at optimizing the physical body, moving beyond the walking trap to heavy strength protocols, using cutting-edge diagnostics like LPA and CCTA for early detection.
Then we jumped into the mind, leveraging the voice as a tool for connection, reframing failure and shame, using productive doubt and premortems to turn worry into action.
And finally, we tied it all together with that core metabolic connection, understanding the inflammation loop, tackling ultra-processed foods, prioritizing fiber, optimizing sleep, and using efficient movement strategies like SIT and HIT alongside heavy lifting.
And the common thread running through absolutely all of these sources, all these different experts, seems to be this focus on efficiency.
Right. Maximum signal for minimal input.
And also, learning to really listen to and decode the subtle but incredibly important signals your own body and brain are constantly giving you. It's about becoming a better interpreter of your own biology.
We spent this whole time talking about optimizing all these internal systems, body, brain, metabolism.
Getting everything working at peak performance internally.
But the ultimate optimization tool, the thing that perhaps underpins all of it, might actually be something external. Something that often lacks a formal prescription in medicine or performance coaching, but might be the true foundation of resilience and longevity.
And that brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you to consider, which comes courtesy of Dr. Avinash Reddy. He stresses that you can do everything else right.
Optimize the diagnostics, nail the exercise, perfect the diet.
Get your physical machine running perfectly. But the most important single message, the overarching principle for true long-term emotional resilience, mental wellness, and overall longevity is quite simple.
Don't do life alone.
It boils down to community, social connection. It's a non-negotiable factor. That network of support, shared experience, belonging. It buffers stress. It improves cognitive function. It even helps us adhere to all those healthy habits we've been talking about.
So after all the biohacks, the protocols, the advanced science, maybe the highest leverage action of all is simply finding your people.
Finding your friends, nurturing your community, and embarking on that journey of mastery, not just as an individual, but together. That might be the most powerful piece of the puzzle.